Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Management Board of XTB, I would like to welcome you cordially to our conference dedicated to a discussion of the preliminary financial results for Q3 2024. My name is Paweł Szejko. During today's conference, I will talk about our financial data. In part, our CEO, Omar Arnaud, will talk about our business activity in this period. That will be followed by Filip Kaczmarzyk, who will talk about his observations in terms of the market context. After the presentation, we have a Q&A session planned. Those of you who are participating in today's conference through the webinar can pose your questions through the chat function. Other persons who are watching today's conference through our broadcast, our webcast, on the Investor Relations tab can pose your questions through email, and this was possible prior to the conference. Now we can go on to a discussion of the results. We have completed Q3. We have a profit of 204 million zlotys against revenue of 470 million Polish zlotys. We had costs of 208 million zlotys. This gives an increase of net profit of 68% year on year, and it's up by 27% Q on Q, so quarter on quarter. And so we can consider this quarter to have been a successful quarter. What's worthy of being highlighted, Q3 was another period in which we saw rapid growth in our profit. We also had expansion of our customer base. A lot has been happening in terms of products, customer acquisition, and of course the CEO will speak to this issue in greater length. So we can say this is one of the reasons for our results, and we have control, of course, over the cost. The second factor that was driving our results, which is outside of our control, is market volatility, and so how the investments of our customers are proceeding and the volumes that are generated by these customers. And of course, this drives the revenue over the course of a quarter. So, as we look at the market characterization of Q3, we can say this was a standard quarter in terms of market volatility. We had long and clear trends. More was happening in Q3 than in Q2, but this was not a quarter where we had volatility as high as we did in Q1. If we look at the individual months of the year, we can say that much more was happening on the markets in the vacation period, so in July and August, while September was more of a calm month. More will be said about the market by Filip Kaczmarzyk in the further portion of our presentation. If we think about the market description in Q3, we have revenue of 470 million, which gives us an increase of 67% year on year and 23% quarter on quarter. As we look at the revenue mix, the trading volume in lots was 1.9 million, so slightly less than in Q2, while the profitability per lot was higher at 246 zlotys. Now, as we look at revenue by class of instrument, in Q3, the most profitable were index CFDs. They accounted for 45% of the revenue mix on financial instruments in this period, and this is a result of the profitability on index CFD in terms of the US STO index, the German DAX index, or also the US 500 index. The second most profitable asset class were commodity index CFDs. They accounted for 38% of the revenue structure or mix, and the most profitable instruments were CFDs based on the prices of gold, natural gas, as well as oil. If we look at the revenue on CFD instruments based on foreign currencies, they represented 15% of the revenue. If we look at profitability, the most dynamic were Bitcoin cryptocurrency, as well as the euro-dollar pair, as well as the Ethereum cryptocurrency.
Koszty działalności operacyjnej w trzecim kwartale
If we look at the
ukształtowały się na poziomie
operating costs in
208 milionów
Q3,
złotych.
they were
Były one
roughly
na
208
porównywalnym
million
poziomie do
Polish
tego, jak
zlotys,
widzieliśmy w drugim
and they were at
i
a
w pierwszym
comparable
kwartale.
level to
Jeżeli
the level we
chodzi
saw
o
in
cały
Q2
rok, to
and
zakładamy,
Q1.
że w 2024
If we look at the full year,
roku
we
łączne
assume
koszty działalności
that in full
operacyjnej,
year
jak i koszty
2024,
marketingu
total
kształtować się na
OPEX
poziomie
as well as
wyższym o
marketing
około
expenses
1/5 do
would be
tego,
around
jaki zaobserwowaliśmy w
around
2023
1/5
roku.
higher than what we saw in 2023.
Pod kątem płynnościowym sytuacja XTB jest bardzo
If we
dobra.
look at
Na koniec
financial
trzeciego
liquidity,
kwartału
the situation
posiadaliśmy
is
1
very
miliard
good. At the end of
789
Q3,
milionów złotych
we had
własnych środków pieniężnych
1.7
oraz
billion
obligacji skarbowych i
Polish
poręczonych
zloty
przez
in
Skarb
own
Państwa czy
funds,
też banki.
and then we also had
Jako
bonds,
zarząd
as well
podtrzymujemy
as
też naszą
instruments
politykę
backed by the State Treasury and
dywidendową,
banks.
która
As the management
upraszczając
team,
zakłada
we
dystrybucję
uphold
do
our
akcjonariuszy
dividend
między
policy
50 a
to
100%
simplify.
jednostkowego
We
zysku
want
netto.
to distribute
Różnego rodzaju
50 to 100% of the standalone profit, having in mind a variety of factors. For example, the regulations or guidelines given by the Polish FSA for brokerages. Now I'd like to go ahead and give the floor to the CEO, who will talk about our operating data. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. We can go ahead and kick off with the next slide. In terms of operations, Q3 was a very good quarter. We exceeded 100,000 new customers, which is the best vacation period result in the company's history. And that means at the end of Q3, the number of new customers is higher than we had in the whole previous year. Also, in comparison to last year, the number of active customers has grown by nearly 200,000 customers, and right now it's 550,000 or nearly 550,000. From the point of time, we can say as we look at net deposits this year, they exceed 6 billion zlotys, which compared to last year, when we had deposits of 2.6 billion, is a major amount of growth. After commencing our cooperation with the new brand ambassador, which you've heard about, I hope you've seen that. So we're talking about Zlatan Ibrahimovic. We are now doing a lot of marketing campaign in all of our branches. We also have an offline campaign underway. If we look at the traditional markets, we have Poland, Czech Republic, Portugal, and Romania. We've also added the German market here, where we have very ambitious plans for the upcoming year. And we can say that we've started longer campaigns, which I hope will always be continued, but not only continued, but we're going to be able to add even more activity to them. As you probably know, in October has also been a very good month in terms of customer acquisition, and I hope that we'll be able to uphold that to the end of this year, with, of course, the exception of the holiday period. Now, as I move on, if we look at the growth in the number of customers, I already talked about that previously, well, we can say that this is certainly a result of our marketing activity, but not only our marketing activity, it's also the outcome of a better and better offering, the fact that we have a broader product portfolio. This is also something we consider to be crucial. On top of the products, we've had the opportunity to discuss multiple times. Recently, we added to our offering our IKE, the Polish IRA, and so we hope that we're going to be able to introduce the ISA account in the UK in Q4. On top of that, 2 weeks ago, we launched in 2 markets, in Portugal and in Czech Republic. We added the digital portfolio with a multi-currency card, and over the next few months, we want to proliferate this product across the bulk of our branches. Of course, it will be improved. This was just the first version that entered the marketplace in the 2 markets that I mentioned. I've mentioned multiple times that our product plans are ambitious for next year, and they will continue to be ambitious. Shortly, we'll enter the budgeting phase for next year and planning next year. So I hope over time we'll be able to share our plans with you in terms of our expectations, in terms of the number of new customers. And these will be ambitious targets, but also in terms of our product plans. That would be it from my side. Of course, during the last portion of our session, I would invite you to pose as many questions as possible. Then I'll ask Filip Kozmaczek to tell us a little bit about what's happening in the market context in Q3. Thank you very much, Omar. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. In terms of the market environment, I think Pavel has said already a lot. If we look at the instruments themselves, the top 10, we can say there are no surprises. Well, in previous quarters, I was always able to withdraw or extract a surprise. You know, the Polish index, or the US index, or DAX, euro dollar, and natural gas. So there was no surprises here. What we should consider noteworthy, this was not as pronounced a quarter as Q1. Well, this was a result of the fact of the activity not being so pronounced in the German DAX index. We can say that it was in a relatively small trend, whereas in Q1, those trends were much more pronounced, much larger. So in August, we had a major correction on the markets, but after that, the markets over the next 10-15 days, they reversed to the original level prior to that correction. So we had some positive revenue, but finally we can say that those positions were reversed. So we can say that the revenue was not as large as on the DAX instrument itself. We could look at gold. Gold in Q3 gave you a perfect example of the market we're looking for. Well, we can always say that the market will never be exactly in line with our ideals, and that's why we're trying to basically have a broad range of instruments, but gold showed a very clear growth trend, upward trend, and it reached record-breaking levels in terms of prices, and this converted into a very high percentage of the result. It was basically accounted for a large percentage of the revenue in mix. And if we look at the trading volume of CFD instruments on a nominal basis, this is something we should look at, $695 billion. And what we should also draw your attention to, we see it's another quarter when there was a record-breaking level of volume trading of equity. So October was also a very good month in terms of equity trading. So we can say this is growing, we're optimizing the costs and the execution. What I said previously, we can see that CFD is very active, and this is something that's growing, and this is something that's quite important to us. And the last thing I wanted to say about crypto, we can say the trading volume on crypto was the lowest in this quarter, in this year, but we can say that it didn't differ much from around 8 million euro in revenue. But we use the STP model slightly modified. We don't take on any exposures for our own trading book. And so such a major revenue with the smaller trading volume, this is because of different market conditions. So the costs have fallen, and so they're much bigger in terms of the volatility. But the strategy that we followed, we've had basically a lower cost, and that's more or less it from my side. And I'm going to turn the floor back over to Pavel. So thank you very much, Filip. So we've completed the official portion of our presentation. Now we'll go on to the Q&A session. And so the first question And this is to you, Omar. So we now have the information. So whether or not the tax changes on CFD in Germany will increase substantially the ability to acquire customers in this market. Who's the leader? What position does XTB have? And what is the size of this market compared to Poland? Well, if we look at tax issues have diminished the interest in Germany, we haven't noted that. And after the changes, we don't have the feeling that the interest has grown substantially in terms of CFD instruments in Germany. The interest was always large. It always depended on how much our marketing spend was, but it was also linked to the products that we rolled out on this market. So I don't see a lot of change here. Who's the leader? In terms of that question, well, we can respond to that with a variety of research. If we look at the competition that's focusing on CFD, then we can say that we're gradually becoming one of the leaders. But if we're talking about all of the possible investments, then we should emphasize that Trade Republic is the clear leader. To some extent, what we should emphasize that Trade Republic is offering, cards, interest, and a portion of the business is focused on investments. We can say this is an offering to the mass customer. That's something we're not doing, but this doesn't alter the fact that as we endeavor to compete with the biggest companies on this market, we are aspiring to the top 500 and having in mind that we have a sufficiently good product and a sufficiently good offering. In Q4, we've started a large-scale marketing campaign. It's very large compared to our standards. Doesn't mean that it's a large campaign, having in mind what Trade Republic has done. So one of our biggest targets for the upcoming year is to come closer in terms of our budget, in terms of big markets like France and Germany, and we want to come closer to the larger companies in these markets. I don't want to get into the details about Poland because we don't share that information. I would like to emphasize once again that generally speaking, amongst the investment firms, we're not even in the top 5, but I believe that we have a lot of potential, much more potential, upside potential than other companies because of our offering, because our offering is much better. And we've basically extended quite extensively, so we've enlarged the product offering. So now the question is, what does new customer acquisition look like in Spain today as opposed to prior to the marketing limitations? We're not sharing specific data about each market. This doesn't alter the fact that the number of new customers in Spain hasn't fallen significantly. We know that in terms of marketing, we're not running any marketing efforts, and that's why costs have diminished or fallen quite substantially. So we cannot fool ourselves that this trend will be continued for the next year or two, because it's obvious that if we're not going to spend any money on marketing over time, then we're going to attract fewer and fewer customers. That doesn't change the fact that we have a plan for this market, and that's why our branch is the same. Even though we're not doing any marketing efforts, it's remained intact, and so we believe that 2025 is a year when we're going to be able to do more, and we're going to be able to replace CFD in Spain. But I don't want to promise anything right now, especially since we're in the course of preparations. So are you considering the opportunity to trade options in Spain? I can't speak to that subject because we haven't shared our product plan for next year, but you know very well that in investments, the number of products is limited. We would, however, over time, over the next few years, we'd like to have a super investment application, and along with every single investment product. So perhaps options will be among them. What does the implementation of the ASO account look like in the UK? I've mentioned that we hope that by the end of this year we'll be able to roll out the ISA accounts in the UK, and we're preparing a marketing campaign for the beginning of the year. It's probably going to be the largest marketing campaign in the history of that branch, so we hope that our plans will not change here. What is the reason for the forecast of having a lower growth rate in marketing costs in 2024? Well, I'll ask Pavel to help me if I need. We had marketing spend planned for Indonesia and Brazil that had been planned, and this is the reason for the decline. We have to mention, of course, Spain, where we had a very large-scale marketing campaign, and now we're not doing any marketing there. Above all, it's a result of those three markets. In connection with the elimination of fiscal burdens on cryptocurrencies in the Emirates for the transfer and conversion of cryptocurrencies and other virtual assets, are you planning to launch a spot for cryptocurrencies in the Emirates? Well, I can tell you that I have the same response. So there's a limit of products, and so we haven't shared our plans for next year. So over time, everything is potentially possible in terms of our offering. How many customers have the Polish IKA, which is an IRA account, and how many customers are utilizing IKA? How many do you expect to have at the end of 2024 and 2025? And when will you offer the ability to transfer IKA to XTB? Well, there's a lot of interest. We don't share this type of information. Well, even though it's not possible to transfer the IKE accounts to XTB, and even though there are some marketing campaigns, well, there's a huge amount of interest, much higher than our previous expectations. However, in response to the final question, when do you plan to offer that transfer option, we hope that in December this will be possible, which would mean that over time, I'm not sure if this would happen in December or January, we'll start a larger marketing campaign related to IKE, and then the numbers with respect to the first two questions would be much higher. When would you like to introduce the IKZE account? If I'm not wrong, I think it will be in Q1 of next year. The next question, let me read out the whole question. Have you taken any steps to fight for social copy trading? eToro had copy trading. You had to discontinue social trading, something that's less aggressive. Is eToro doing this legally? If not, have you taken any steps to fight that? I see copy trading. I see a lot of potential in copy trading. It's not possible to invest the money of friends and other persons. If you want to do that legally for several hundred thousand or several million. So I'm considering cooperation with eToro since you don't have that service. Should I wait? What I would like to emphasize, it wasn't copy trading, but it was social. What we're planning, I'm hoping that in November, we're going to talk with the Polish FSA about social in its current form, but this doesn't alter the fact that at present we're only talking about social the way it was introduced, so we do not have any plans to introduce copy trading. So if this is something that you expect, then unfortunately this will not be in offering for many of the upcoming months, and perhaps we'll never introduce that offering. If we were to return to this at any point in time in terms of social trading, well, this hasn't been abandoned, but because of having other priorities, we're focusing on something else. Let me emphasize once again, In November, we want to talk with the Polish FSA about social trading in order to be able to reinstate that service on our platform. I don't want to respond to the question if eToro is doing that legally or not. You have to remember that eToro is regulated by the Cyprus regulatory authority. That's critical here. Of course, we're pleased that Polish FSA is in contact with SASEC and whether or not it can be continued or not be continued. So, are you happy with the hit ratio in terms of introducing new products? It seems to me that everything's taking quite a bit of time. Having in mind the financial capabilities and the number of IT employees, I would expect a faster pace of growth. Introducing bonds doesn't seem to be a challenge of this magnitude that you have to push it back in time. So if we were to take a look at our product plan for the upcoming year, well, it has several components. One of them was to improve our investment plans, and the next component was social, and the next two products were IKA and ISA, and the final product on top, outside of bonds, was supposed to be this portfolio with a currency card, multi-currency card. So having in mind our plans, I would clearly tell you that this is not something that's being delayed, because everything outside of bonds, everything that we had promised to you at the beginning of the year will have been implemented, and we're clearly pleased with the pace of bringing these products online. It's not the case that we just want to add any type of product. We want to have a very good product before we roll it out. So I don't think that this is something that's being artificially protracted or delayed. Since we have a large number of teams in our technology department, we're not only dealing with new products. This is a large organization, and there's a lot of additional responsibility in terms of bonds, even though this was not a major thing. If we were to focus on it, having in mind the current interest that we're offering, it seems to me that we have a much better offering than the bonds that we would have implemented. So had we believed that bonds would have been a very good product for our customers, then within a few weeks or months, we probably would have been able to continue that. But since we didn't think that it would be as good of a product, that's why we decided to temporarily abandon the product. We're very pleased with the course of the work, and bonds were the only product that we had planned that was not rolled out this year. Why have you added to your offering only the IKE product and not IKZE also? It's always a matter of setting priorities. Well, it's better to introduce one product as opposed to wait for both products. So basically, it was possible to do IKE right away. Well, we didn't see any benefits from waiting. So why haven't we introduced IKZE? We believe that at present it's better to introduce the ISA account in UK, or perhaps, in France or elsewhere. It's always a matter of setting priorities. Can I ask you for some information about the products that you're working on, the new products you're working on? Well, this is a question about new products, as I see. I can reiterate what I've said. Right now, we're planning the next year. I can't say anything more because I'm in the process of planning now. Unfortunately, I won't be able to say anything on that subject. Are you going to introduce products into your offering, having in mind bigger investors, so loans to purchase, equities, full order scope? Well, these are very large-scale products, and these are potentially for bigger investors. For example, the full range of orders Well, some of those aren't related to whether or not you're a bigger or a smaller investor like futures and options. Well, I can respond to this question from a couple different vantage points. We're not going to be think about the full range of orders. So in other products, I think I've already talked about those other products in my past during this session. Well, the next question, Omar. Perhaps I'll respond to this question about the change in guidance on costs. Well, this is because of the revision to the level of marketing spend that we had planned for this year. And the CEO also addressed that revision to marketing spend during his response to one of the previous questions. The next question is about when we plan to share with you the plans for the new products. In terms of our product plan for next year, we're going to want to share that information with you probably when we publish the preliminary results for 2024, just as we did with the product plan for this year. In terms of this question, why did revenue fall on equities quarter on quarter? Well, we earn money in terms of equities on two components. Well, our customers exceed 100,000 euros, and the second element where we earn money, this is when there's currency swaps, when customers are buying equities in a different currency, and the volume generated by a customer, and whether or not that monthly threshold is exceeded or uses cross-currency investments. These are decisions made by our customers, and this basically has an impact on the level of our revenue. The next question is about OPEX next year. So, just as we're going to be able to share that information with you when we publish the report with the preliminary results for 2024. At that point of time, we would have completed the budgeting process, and it would be easier at that point in time for us to share with you our expectations regarding OPEX in 2025. The next question, maybe Omar, I would ask you to respond to this question. How many customers would you like to acquire next year? Well, I can reiterate what Pavel said. The guidance we want to give you probably at the time when we publish the results for Q4 of this year. Right now, we're just haven't started the budgeting process. When we want to reach that 100,000 figure, I'm not sure if it's going to be next year. So if we have more than 40,000, so I hope as soon as possible. Personally, I believe that it's going to be quite difficult to achieve next year. What sort of expectations do you have of the new markets of Brazil and Indonesia, and what sort of potential do you see in these markets, and why do you want to develop your position in those markets? Perhaps I will start from the launch moment. So from the moment of launch, in Indonesia, we want to launch next year. We hope this will happen in Q1 of next year in terms of Brazil. We're still waiting for the license. The license probably shouldn't be awarded until Q2 of next year. So if we talk about the upside potential or growth potential, we're talking about something in Brazil that's going to happen in many months down the road. So we're not planning any major activities we don't want to develop any type of expectations when we go to Indonesia. What we should emphasize here is that once we start our business in Indonesia, we're going to begin only with equities, ETFs, and investment plans. So we won't offer CFDs because that would require securing additional permits. And so that permitting wouldn't be done until the latter half of the year. So in terms of our expectations of Brazil, basically we'd like to be able to begin operations on that market. When we talk about Indonesia, our major goal is to attract as many customers as possible because monetization will be quite difficult. So with the exception of investment plans, ETFs, and equities, we wouldn't have the CFDs. Well, we're always interested in markets that are developing, that are growing, but also are regulated. It's not the case that you can bring Asia on board with a license that would enable us to offer equities, ETFs, and CFDs. Well, this is possible only on two markets, Singapore and Indonesia. So I think it was quite simple to make this choice. Indonesia was an obvious choice for us. Singapore, of course, is very competitive as a city-state. It's a very expensive country, while Indonesia is growing at a very fast pace. We see a lot of opportunities for ourselves there, and so there's some competitors, and so we believe that we'll be able to grow there. If we think about Brazil, the situation is similar. This is a huge country, not very much competition in terms of CFD instruments, and that's one of the reasons why we'd like to enter that marketplace. Well, we should also emphasize that Indonesia and Brazil, if we look at the competition amongst companies, investment firms offering equities and ETFs, or fintechs above all, well, the competition is very fierce, which doesn't mean that we wouldn't have a position there. Is it possible that in Q4 you will come closer to bringing on board 150,000 customers? I think we've published some information. In October we had 44,000 accounts. So everything is possible, even if in November we were to add exactly the same number. Well, even if we multiply that number by 3, it would be very difficult to reach the 150,000 water market. And we have to remember that from the middle of December, the interest amongst our customers is always diminished because of the holiday period. Of course, I hope it's possible, but at the same time, I would not want to promise anything at this point in time. Here, the new products that you plan to introduce into your offering next year, well, this is about the next year. Well, let me tell you without drilling down into the details. I can't portray the products that we want to implement or roll out. Well, we would like to add some additional products that will be safe for our customers. And we'd like to add not only those products that would enable us to diversify our product offering, but we would also like to add products that would enable us to diversify the revenue stream. So basically the revenue stream diversification is quite important to us. So thank you very much, Omar. Based on what I see at this point in time, we have responded to the final questions. So we would like to thank you at this point in time for your participation in today's conference. If you have any follow-up questions,